Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going deep into a real-life crime drama, the story of Randy Greenawalt, this American serial killer
Oh, wow.
and mass murderer's life. It's like something out of the thriller novel, you know?
Yeah.
We've got excerpts from his Wikipedia article. And buckle up, because it's a wild ride.
What really gets me about Greenawalt's story is how it goes way beyond just a series of brutal killings. You've got a prison escape in there, a multi-state killing spree, even a landmark Supreme Court decision gets mixed in.
That's right. We're not just talking a list of crimes here.
Yeah.
We'll be mapping out Greenawalt's journey from his early murders to his life sentence, the shocking escape, the terrifying chaos that followed, and finally, his execution.
This case, it really exposes the inner workings of the justice system, how we punish, how we try to rehabilitate, and the ripple effects that seemingly minor decisions can have.
Let's start with 1974. Randy Greenawalt's already no stranger to serious trouble. He's connected to the murder of Henry Weber, a truck driver, whose body was discovered in Arkansas. Just days later, he and his brother James are in custody in Arizona for the murder of another truck driver, Stanley Sandage. They actually used Sandage's credit card, which led straight to their capture.
It's a curious start, isn't it? You see this impulsiveness in these early crimes that's both frightening and oddly clumsy at the same time.
And here's something that'll send shivers down your spine. Greenawalt actually marked Sandage's truck by painting an X on the window before shooting him. Just think about the chilling premeditation there.
That detail, it really says a lot about his state of mind at the time, doesn't it? A detached, almost methodical brutality.
So they're apprehended.
Yeah.
What next? Randy manages to strike a deal, a life sentence. In exchange for testifying against his brother James, they both land in Florence State Prison, trading one form of confinement for another.
That plea deal, that's a real turning point. It spares Randy from the death penalty, but it inadvertently sets off like a chain of events with wide-ranging consequences.
Exactly. And here's the strange part. Despite multiple murders on his record, Randy becomes like a model prisoner. He even secures a job as a clerk. It almost makes you wonder if those in charge saw something different in him, something that hinted at rehabilitation.
It certainly raises the question, doesn't it? Was this genuine transformation, or was it a calculated move to build trust and exploit opportunities? Remember, we're talking about a man who already showed a disturbing level of manipulation.
Now let's introduce Gary Tyson. He's another lifer, infamous for his escape attempts, serving time for the murder of a prison guard. And as fate would have it, he ends up in the same trustee unit as Randy Greenawalt. Things are about to take a very dramatic turn.
Oh, you can just feel that tension building, can't you? You've got two convicted murderers, both with a history of violence, placed together in a position of relative freedom within the prison walls. It's a recipe for disaster.
It's July 30th, 1978. The Tyson brothers visit their father in prison, and they've managed to smuggle in a sawed-off shotgun. It's clear they're not there for a simple social call.
This is the catalyst for the mayhem that follows. It's a meticulously orchestrated plan highlighting just how desperate and cunning these individuals were.
During the visit, everything erupts into chaos. Guards are overpowered. Randy cuts communication lines, and the five men escape in the Tyson's car. Their objective: a ranch in Mexico, potentially connected to drug trafficking.
But escape is just the first chapter in this saga. They're now fugitives, desperately fighting for survival with seemingly nothing left to lose.
To avoid roadblocks, they swap their car for a Lincoln Continental and stick to back roads. But then, near Quartzsite, they get a flat tire. They're spotted by Marine Strike John Lyons, who, with his wife, son, and niece, stops to help. Sadly, this act of compassion seals their tragic fate.
This encounter, it's a chilling example of the random, senseless nature of their crimes. The Lyons family were simply at the wrong place, at the wrong time, caught in the crosshairs of this desperate escape.
What follows is truly horrifying. The escapees force the Lyons family into their car and drive them into the desolate Arizona desert. Gary Tyson and Randy Greenawalt then shoot them. The niece, Teresa, is left to bleed out, but tragically dies trying to crawl away.
The sheer brutality of this act is staggering. It shows a complete disregard for human life, a chilling escalation of their criminal behavior.
After stealing and painting the Lyons car, they make their way to Flagstaff. Greenawalt even visits a pen pole to get supplies. They even attempt to flee by plane. but abort when they suspect an ambush. It becomes a tense game of cat and mouse with the law closing in.
Their desperation's growing, their escape plan unraveling with each passing moment. Each encounter, it raises the stakes and pushes them further down a, a path of violence.
And sadly, their path of violence intersects with another innocent couple. They run into newlyweds James and Margene Judge, steal their van, and add 2 more victims to their horrifying spree.
The repetition of these senseless killings, it's deeply disturbing. It's a pattern of escalating violence, fueled by fear and desperation.
Their dream of escaping to Mexico is fading fast, with roadblocks tightening the noose. Their desperation is reaching a fever pitch.
That's right. Their carefully crafted plan is falling apart. Each move they make seems to just like deepen their predicament.
Their attempts to outrun the consequences of their actions lead them to try and rob a gas station. But they fail. Then they encounter a roadblock and fire shots at an officer, narrowly missing him. At the next roadblock, they're met with a hail of gunfire.
It's the climax of their desperate escape bid, a chaotic scene where the consequences of their choices are finally catching up with them.
The van crashes. Donald Tyson's killed, and the remaining 4 desperately flee into the harsh Arizona desert.
The gang is shattered, their elaborate escape plan in ruins, the weight of their actions is about to come crashing down.
It's a brutal fight for survival under the scorching desert sun.
The desert becomes their final adversary. It's a stark contrast to the relative freedom they experienced as trustees in prison, isn't it?
But it's the end of the road for this desperate gang. Greenawalt and the remaining Tyson brothers are eventually captured. Gary Tyson, the architect of their escape, succumbs to the unforgiving desert just days later.
Their capture marks the end of their reign of terror, but it's also the beginning of a complex legal battle.
And it's a tangled web indeed. Greenawalt is convicted
Yeah.
and sentenced to death. For the 4 murders committed during their escape, the Tyson brothers initially receive lighter sentences, but they eventually also end up with life sentences.
Their varying sentences raise a critical question about accountability and the degrees of culpability. Were the Tyson brothers willing participants in the murders, or were they under duress, coerced by their father and Greenawalt? The courts, they wrestled with these nuances and the resulting sentences. They reflect the complexity of the legal issues involved.
Now, this is where the story takes an intriguing legal turn. Greenawalt's case goes all the way to the Supreme Court. Remember, he didn't personally pull the trigger in every murder.
Yeah.
This raises a complex legal question. Can someone be sentenced to death for what's known as felony murder, a death that occurs during the commission of another felony, even if they weren't the direct killer?
This is where the landmark case of Tyson v. Arizona comes into play. The Supreme Court ruled that that the death penalty could indeed be applied in felony murder cases if the defendant was a major participant in the underlying felony.
Enacted with reckless indifference to human life.
So in essence, they established a precedent that has had a lasting impact on death penalty law. Exactly. To put it in simpler terms, imagine you and a friend rob a bank, and your friend shoots and kills a guard, even though you didn't pull the trigger. Under the felony murder rule, you could be held just as responsible because you were a major participant in the crime and showed reckless disregard for human life.
So Greenawalt's case, as horrific as it is, brought about a significant shift in the legal landscape.
Absolutely. It compelled a reassessment of the death penalty and how it's applied in cases where multiple individuals are involved in a crime. It challenged the legal system to grapple with the intricacies of culpability and determine when the death penalty is truly warranted.
Greenawalt spends 2 decades on death row, exhausting every legal avenue. Finally, in 1997, his sentence is carried out.
His execution, it marks a definitive end to the case. But the profound questions raised by the Tyson gang's escape and killing spree, they continue to reverberate.
Before we conclude this deep dive, let's touch upon a detail that always makes me pause. His last meal and his last words. A bit morbid, I know, but it offers a glimpse into his final moments. Greenawalt chose 2 cheeseburgers, French fries, coffee and milk for his last meal.
It's a strangely ordinary choice, isn't it? Especially when juxtaposed against the extraordinary circumstances. It makes you wonder what thoughts were going through his mind during those final hours.
And his last words were, "I have prayed for you many times, and the Lord is using you well. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine."
Mm.
A chilling statement, considering the gravity of actions.
Those words are certainly open to interpretation. Were they a genuine expression of faith and acceptance, or perhaps a final act of manipulation and an attempt to control the narrative, even in his final moments? It's a question that only he could answer.
The impact of his crimes on the lives of so many is difficult to fully comprehend.
Greenawalt's case, it stands as a stark reminder of the devastating power of violence and the long-lasting scars it leaves on victims, families, and the justice system itself.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive,
Yeah.
from his initial murders and carefully planned escape to the senseless violence of the killing spree, the capture, the legal battles, and ultimately Greenawalt's execution. It's a story that's both captivating and deeply unsettling.
You know, what strikes me is the sheer randomness of it all. The Lyons family, the Judge couple, they were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, victims of a desperate and increasingly violent escape attempt. Their stories really underscore the fragility of life and the devastating ripple effects of criminal actions.
It certainly makes you think about the choices we make and how they can have unintended consequences that impact lives in ways we might never imagine.
Thinking about the wider context, the Tyson gang's escape and the subsequent legal battles, they actually they led to some significant changes in prison security protocols and how the death penalty is applied.
That's an important point. Their case forced a reassessment
Hmm.
of how we handle dangerous criminals and the legal framework around felony murder.
Right. Their case, as horrific as it was, it brought about a reexamination of how we as a society approach these incredibly complex issues.
So before we wrap up, I want to leave you with something to think about. What if Greenawalt hadn't been part of that trustee program? What if he hadn't crossed paths with Gary Tyson? Would any of this have happened?
That's a fascinating question. It makes you ponder the roles of fate and circumstance and how they intersect with the choices we make. If Greenawalt hadn't been given that position of trust within the prison, would he have even had the opportunity to participate in the escape? Would the Tyson gang have succeeded without his knowledge and assistance?
It's impossible to know for sure, but it's a thought-provoking question that highlights the complex interplay of factors that can contribute to criminal behavior.
It also underscores the critical need to examine our prison systems and ensure they're serving their intended purpose
Yeah.
to punish,
Yeah.
to rehabilitate, and ultimately to protect society. Are we doing enough to address the underlying causes of criminal behavior and provide genuine opportunities for rehabilitation? These are vital questions that demand ongoing attention and thoughtful debate.
And if you're interested in exploring this case further, there are books and films that delve deeper into the story. Last Rampage comes to mind. It's a very compelling account of the events.
It's a gripping story, but one that should be approached with sensitivity
Yeah.
and respect for the victims and their families. Their lives were tragically cut short, and it's crucial to remember the human cost of these crimes.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the life and crimes of Randy Greenawalt.
It's been a journey, exploring the dark side of human nature, the intricacies of the justice system, and the enduring impact of choices and consequences.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.